Greetings XLs, I'm CodRayZeal, and joining me today as always are Sir Reginald Amadeus Fortescue III and Frank. Say hi guys.
Hi.
And today we're going to be going over my Queen of the Forest Righteous Fire Trickster. Now, the first thing to note about this build is that it is energy shield based, and that it does not use the Chevron's wrappings, obviously, because it's using Queen of the Forest, so we have to focus on getting a decent life pool as well as maximizing our chaos resist. So with that said, let's have a look at the Ascendancy first so we can get an understanding of how the gearing is going to work. So first off, the Righteous Fire standards for playing a Trickster, which are Potent Reaper, which gives us damage over time, some life, energy shield and mana on kill, as well as a massive boost in recovery rate whenever we kill something with our damage over time, which with Righteous Fire is always. Next, for a little bit of extra damage and also a better time sustaining Righteous Fire, we pick up Prolonged Pain, which gives us 10% reduced damage taken from damage over time and 15% more damage over time. We pick up Ghost Dance, which gives us a little bit of extra movement speed and nothing else really affects us too much. And then we pick up Escape Artist. Now what Escape Artist does is, in addition to reducing damage taken when we're out of combat, which does affect Righteous Fire and makes it easier to sustain out of combat, it gives us 5 evasion rating per 1 ES on our helm and 1 ES per 6 evasion on our chest, which is what allows us to run Queen of the Forest. So if we go over our gear, we'll see that we have a Queen of the Forest. Now this gives us a large amount of evasion rating, and because of that it gives us a decent amount of energy shield, which allows us to run an energy shield character with an evasion chest. And then, to boost our evasion so that we run faster with Queen of the Forest, we use the Vertex, which gives us close to 800 evasion rating standard, and then our energy shield is multiplied by 5 to give us even more evasion, leading to this helm giving us more evasion than the chest itself. So that's really awesome. And it also gives us some chaos resistance, so it all works out pretty well. If we go over the other gear, we'll see that I'm using a Supreme Spiked Shield with +1 to all maximum resistances. This boosts our chaos resistance as well as our fire resistance to make Righteous Fire easier to sustain, as well as making it so that we can protect ourselves from chaos damage. Just a little bit more. It also has socketed gems have 15% reduced mana reservation. Now what this has allowed me to do is empower a level 21 Purity of Fire to give us that extra +1 max fire res. And we also socket our discipline in here because mana is pretty tight. Now instead of this you could just use a non-empowered Purity of Fire and discipline and then use a Sapphire's Frame, which would boost our chaos resistance even further. For our boots, these seemed like a natural choice. Syntrek provides us with a decent amount of evasion rating as well as a large amount of energy shield. So they're pretty much very difficult to top. For our belt, we use a shaped chain belt. Preferably we'd like a shaped crystal belt. Those are extremely expensive. And we get the 20% increased energy shield recovery rate mod. That is the most important thing, although it was nice to have some life on here too. For our gloves, we've crafted an Essence of Delirium onto some fingerless silk gloves, just for the extra damage to Scorching Ray. This is obviously to socket our Righteous Fire. For our jewelry, we just use rings that have high energy shield and chaos resistance, just to top off our chaos resistance. And then for our amulet, I've got a marble amulet which has decently large energy shield gains, some attributes to fix any stat requirements we have, and then lastly it also has a beast crafted aspect of the crab. Now I found that when running with this much evasion rating, it was nice to have that physical damage reduction, and when we're standing still we also convert all of our energy shield to armor, through the Iron Reflexes passive, which is currently on the Grailwood Shank sword. I found my damage was decent enough that I was able to use a Grailwood Shank, and this allows us to have around 40,000 armor when we're channeling our Scorching Ray. It's a bit of an unorthodox choice, but I've found that it's working exceptionally well, and it really helps for speed running the Uber Labyrinth for enchants. Another thing that is decently important in this build is a Watcher's Eye Jewel. Now, having a look at this Watcher's Eye Jewel, you can see that it has 2% of maximum energy shield regenerated per second. That is actually secondary bonus on this thing. What's really important here is the chaos resistance while affected by purity of elements. What this allows us to do is get up to 50% chaos resistance just by running purity of elements, and it really helps us boost our chaos resistance all the way to the cap. So if you're shopping for a Watcher's Eye and you can only afford one, the chaos resistance is the way to go. Our other jewels are Conqueror's Efficiency, which just reduces our mana reservation a little bit so that we can channel and cast all of our skills. And then just Abyss jewels with energy shield and resistances, basically. This is an overview of the passive tree. You can also have a look at the path of building in the description to have a look at it. You may need fewer or more reservation nodes depending on what kind of shield you're using. I was using Sapphire's Frame for quite a while, so it is an option here. It just gives us a little bit less energy shield. Overall, this build is extremely quick, reaching pretty insane movement speed when our flasks are active. We get 176 movement speed with active flasks and about 43,000 evasion. So there's a little bit of room for improvement there, but not enough to warrant spending more currency on the build. So with the flasks being mentioned, let's have a look at them. First of all, we take a Jade Flask of Reflexes. This is important to boost our evasion to a point where we can actually get it capped and get that maximum movement speed. Next, we're running a Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline. Because we're focusing on run speed rather than attack speed, we really need a Quicksilver Flask in our inventory. And then lastly, the Witchfire Brew is a perfect fit for this build because it creates a smoke cloud which allows us to dodge attacks. It boosts our evasion rating by a decent amount, and it also gives us a Despair Curse aura, which means we don't need to reserve mana or find a way to apply the curse. I'm then using a Ruby Flask of Warding because I don't really have the resistances to protect against things like elemental weakness, so having curse immunity allows me to run elemental weakness maps. Lastly, because we are energy shield based with 2000 life and capped chaos resistance, we do need to be able to heal our life from time to time. Now, the Ascendancy does take care of this most of the time, so you probably find yourself not using this flask very often. But during boss fights such as Alira in the burial chambers, she does a substantial amount of chaos damage. Not so much that we can't fight her, but enough that we have to use our flask during the fight. So I've picked a Perpetual Eternal Life Flask of Staunching. I found the bleed removal here to be pretty decent because we don't have any other means of bleed removal at this point, since we need to stack our evasion on most of the other flasks. So while testing this build, I found that it was actually quite exceptional, and I really recommend it for someone who wants to play Righteous Fire but also wants to, speed farm the low to mid tier maps, or just wants to run the lab for enchants. Since this build is so fast but a bit less tanky than the Juggernaut variant, we can do easy lab days and get all the keys, or if we do hard lab days we can skip some of Izara's buffs and do them anyway. When I first started this build I didn't expect it to be this good, but here it is. It's quite exceptional and I definitely recommend it. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And from myself, Sir Reginald Amadeus Fortescue III and Frank, we'd like to thank you for watching, and good luck and stay juicy.